power.
Mr. Chairman, I think because you're not in the regular part of the meeting yet, you probably have the ability to jump down to reports and get some of those reports done while this technology is being changed.
All right.
Just so we're not all staring at each other for the next.
Well, I got a
15
minute
minutes.
before I get into the mayor's report.
Sure.
I wanted to start off with just a real short, encouraging story, if I could. I was thinking about this today. Individual by the name of Benaiah, he's walking down a snowy path, similar to what we've had over the last week or so, and he comes upon a lion, stares the lion in the face, and lion stares back at him, and Benaiah starts to run towards the lion starts to run towards him, and all of a sudden the lion actually starts to retreat until he realizes that he is the king of the jungle. So he turns and he runs towards Benaiah. They're running towards each other. And thank goodness all of a sudden the lion falls down through a snowy pit where Benaiah stops and he looks down. And it's kind of similar to the days that we have where sometimes you look and you make a poor decision and you say, wow. I said, you turn around and you walk away and you have that opportunity. Benaiah turns, walks away, but he jumps down into this pit. And as you'd imagine, you hear the growling of the lion and all for a few moments, and then all of a sudden, nothing. And you can let your imagination go to what probably took place. And then all of a sudden, Benaiah comes climbing up out of this pit, bloodied, beat, but victorious. And the reason is because Benaiah is a lion chaser. Lion chasers are wired a little bit differently, and you wonder why I bring this up. And I was thinking as I was driving today, it kind of reminds me of the individuals in this room, lion chasers, wired just a little bit differently. And a lot of individuals, maybe in the community, outside the community, see that as a bad thing, but I don't. Because if you knew the rest of the story, you'd find out that Benaiah became the chief bodyguard for the king of Israel. And thing about it is, if you were looking for a bodyguard, you were looking through resumes, what would stand out the most for you? If I seen that an individual killed a lion with his bare hands, that would be my guy. And I just bring this up. You guys are lion chasers, and I'm excited to see what you're going to accomplish this year. And I'm excited for the meeting to get started. So I'll roll into the mayor's report. And I don't have too much on it. I did a little bit of door-to-door, not too much. The weather didn't cooperate too much, but I just have to say that there was nothing but good. Any individual that I talk to likes the direction that the community is going in. Something that I talked to the city manager about, and we're kind of in the planning stages with this, is putting together a program where we do welcoming packages for individuals that are new to the community, that I have it emailed to me when somebody moves in. We get a welcoming package, and myself and my wife deliver the package. I thought it was just something good for the community, something that would improve upon our image and help people feel welcome. And the very last thing is I was able to go to the League of Women Voters luncheon the other day, and it was a real nice time. Got to fellowship with individuals, got to listen to what's going on in other communities, and most importantly got to do what I enjoy doing the most, and that's to brag about Newton Falls. We have anybody else, any of the other council members?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We attended the Treasury Investment Board meeting last week. I want to say that the Newton Falls finances are in very, very, very good shape. With the stock market up and the other markets up too, we're doing quite well. So I commend our team, Anna, Mr. Lynch, Mr. Waddell, for making the proper investments. I don't know Jim's last name at Toledo. What's his last name?
Yeah, Jim's last name is
Perea.
Perea.
Priya, yeah. And he's a pretty good guy from Youngstown. That's the kind of guys we have to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
My next.
Yeah.
Okay. I went to the Planning and Zoning meeting on January 7th at 6 o'clock. And the chairperson this year is Brian Exodus for the 2020. We checked the progress on the village map for the updates. And the main thing we discussed was the fiber optic tower and how that may progress. And they're checking on more, collecting more information about it and how feasible it will be for our community. And the next meeting on that is February 4th at 6 o'clock. On January 14th, 2020 at 6 p.m., I met with the Park and Recreation Commission, and the new chairperson is Tim Stetson.
Okay.
And they set up meetings for 2020, the fourth Tuesday every other month at 6 o'clock. The updates on the park master plan, Councilman Savette suggested hiring an engineer to assess our park needs, and let's see what else. And we discussed about having a report from Mr. Schaefer and Mark Stepford, approximately about how the usage of the parks are now, and what the cost is to maintain them, and if vacated, what happens to the land, etc. And I think Councilman Savette can explain more about that, okay? All right, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Waddell?
Mayor, I attended the League of Women Voters with Mayor Klein there Saturday, and I guess what was exciting for me was to sit there, even after, I got to speak about what's going on in the community too, but it was just so nice to sit back and hear somebody else talk about our city also, and talk about the good things that we're doing and the directions we're headed. Instead of I'm the only one ever talking about it, it was just nice to hear a little bit of a different version, a different concept, and a different thought process, and I appreciate that. It was good. Also, that we attended that Treasury Investment Board meeting. That's the first one I've attended. I kind of was impressed with Attorney Fritz and the knowledge that you have of the investments, but you've been attending them all along. Our investments are in good shape. We've got them in the right spots, it looks like, and I think we have a good team out there that's looking after our finances really well. I attended a meeting with AMP, and I hope you're going to, expunge on that just a little bit. It was, I kind of got there a little late, but got some good information out of it, and kind of looking forward to where that takes us. And there's some really good things, I think, coming down the road with AMP. We had a couple of meetings on economic development. There's hoping to get some things moving again, but we're still working at it. We're still going forward. I did some work on submitting a piece of property to Team NEO and to the Chamber, Youngstown Regional Chamber, for a state project consideration. So we're out there trying to do the things that we're supposed to do. I attended a training session with Mark Stempert on the ArcGIS program that the county's giving us, or not giving us, they're working with us on that program. I think we're going to be excited about that, and I think that once we get and you were there, and obviously, I think once we get all the bells and whistles we want with that, and we get to learn how that works, it's going to be very beneficial to the community, I think. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer?
I had no council committees this week.
Okay. Mr. Savette?
Yeah, met with the planning, or the Park and Rec Commission with Councilman Braemeier and, Councilwoman Braemeier, sorry. And we talked about the Park Master Plan, and we've been having several meetings with engineers to get somebody on board to get a proposal so we can start that ball rolling.
Okay, Ms. Finance Director.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, council members, and citizens of Newton Falls, our update for the Finance Director's report. We have closed the fiscal year of 2019. We have done a bank reconciliation, and I have a very detailed report that will need to be passed for tonight. But again, we are very stable. We have, our finances are very well. Our investments did very well in 2019. The income tax collections were up by 8%. So overall, for our bank reconciliation for the year, and we are balanced to the very penny. So we reconciled our bank balance to our books of $843,774.22. And again, we are balanced to the very penny. And in addition, we are working on some additional grants for 2020. The park grant is in process that we received from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. We're working with Game Time to hopefully get that scheduled sometime in the spring, maybe get it coordinated with the high school community day to get that installed. And then we received the NOPEC grant for the cell phone charging station that is outside the city manager's office. So again, it's been a very busy and successful 2019, and we're hoping for the same in 2020.
Law Director?
Whoa. Am I allowed to ask the finance director any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Munson, what do you anticipate our carryover for this year then?
I don't have to anticipate. I know exactly what our carryover was. In the general fund, we ended 2019 at $609,505.14. For all the entire funds, our carryover balance was $8,690,054.58.
Was that less than it was last year, though? Wasn't it 700 and some thousand plus 100?
That-
Was it around 800 we invested last year?
Okay, so our carryover was about 700,000 2 years ago, or a year ago, in 2018. We began the year 2019 with a carryover of $613,020.14. So we're right on target with having a $600,000 carryover. That's what we've had for basically the last 2 years.
From what I saw, and maybe I'm wrong, when we did the appropriation in December, it was 631, but we only took in 609, or were we 25,000 off something?
No, when we appropriated in December,
Yes.
we were 2 weeks out from the end of the year, and so we were estimating. So the appropriation ordinance before you tonight is our actual figures, and what you're going to find out the difference is that estimate was high from what we actually spent.
With the sewer project that we had over on First Street, Charleston Road, and the sewer sucker and everything else that we had a lot of extra, are we okay, are we all right? Are we going to be able to make the same amount of investments this year, or do we plan on making the same amount of investments?
On the investments, we have what's called the Huntington Max account, which is a money market account. We have hired Jim Perea as our investment advisor through UBS, and there's 2 accounts. There's a main account, which basically deals with government-backed securities, and then we have another account called CAM, which stands for the Cincinnati Asset Management Account, which has to do with highly rated corporate bonds, which earns a higher rate. So last year, the average investment interest was approximately 10%. This year, no, we will not see that interest rate. We're probably looking anywhere from about 2 to 3%. So we typically on investments receive $50,000 in revenue, but 2019, it was a very wonderful, blessed year. We received over $100,000 in income interest revenue last year.
My question, and excuse me, like I say, Anna, I don't have a master's degree. Do you anticipate this affecting anything else or tightening up our purse strings? We'll have to tighten our purse strings anywhere else?
As their fiscal officer, I will give you my opinion. We are fiscally sound on all the funds. Last April, we did council bless for a rate study for water and sewer, and we did conduct a rate study for electric. I've already spoke with our city manager, had conversations with him. I am concerned about our sewer fund. I have already discussed with him, and I would like a plan placed and have your blessing. There's some debt that goes out to the year 2048. There's what's called revenue bonds. There's a Series A and a Series B that basically, when we borrowed this money, it was over $7 million. We've only paid down the minimum, which is okay, but we are basically still in debt for the sewer department, over $6 million. And the interest rate is 4.38% approximately from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm looking to find ways and suggest to refinance that debt.
Mr. Chairman, can I be heard on that point, please? Yeah, thank you. Councilman Bariak, 2019 was one of the record years for investment revenue for the city of Newton Falls that we've had in many, many years. And the general fund carryover is approximately the same as it was for the prior year, but by virtue of the fact that the investment return was even higher, we're in very good shape in that regard. The sewer debt that is being referred to by the finance director is debt that's dedicated through the enterprise fund of the wastewater treatment plant, and that is isolated and insulated from the general fund and the other funds. So what she's going to try to do is refinance at a lower rate the agriculture department loan, but the fact that she wants and needs to do that does not affect the full faith and credit of the city because it's isolated to the general fund and insulated in that fashion.
I understand that, Mr. Lynch. What I was saying is, I know we got some grants on the first phase of that coming across, then we went ahead and put a bigger pipe, right?
Right. Yes, we
And I
did.
didn't know we didn't get a grant for that. We paid for that, right?
That's right. Yes, we
Oh, there
did.
you go. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we ended up eating some money on that.
That's true.
Okay, all right. I'm just asking some questions.
No, that's,
All right, you know
that's
what I
fine.
mean.
Just wanted to let you,
That's correct.
just,
Thank you.
yeah, okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments for the finance director? No? Okay, Mr. Law Director?
Sorry, nothing to report, but I'm available for questions.
Okay, does anybody have anything for the law director? Going once, going twice? Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. One of the things that I've had a lot of discussion about and was contained in the last newsletter issued by the city, in fact, it was called the Utilities, Electric Utilities Newsletter, and you got a lot of information about that. And one of the things that we've been talking about is getting back together with these people from American Municipal Power, AMP, our suppliers of electricity, and trying to find a way to further reduce our costs and overhead with them. As you know, we had an average of over 6% reduction in our electricity rates for the bills that are going out here in January. That's an exciting thing. However, I indicated we continue to work with AMP to get them to participate in the program to bring further rate reductions to Newton Falls. Councilman Waddell was able to attend that meeting. Bill George was there, and representatives from our engineering firm. We are moving towards that solution. So I guess what I wanted to say is I want everyone to understand that it's an ongoing process, but we're getting very close to a solution that will help even further. And from a financial standpoint, if we're able to deal with our electric rates, that can be used further as an economic development tool to bring more businesses in. So American Municipal Power is coming to the table. That's what we wanted to have happen. And I think you'll be pleased with the results. We have to go through a very detailed evaluation of what they're presenting to us, and that's why Bill George, our electric director, is part of that process as well. But just stay tuned. We're getting closer and closer to an even better situation as it relates to our electric rates. And if the economic development programs that Councilman Waddell's been talking about continues to be true, that will also mean we've got further customers to expand the breadth of our customer base for electricity use. And that helps a lot because of the fact that we don't want to be what they refer to as long in the industry, that is, having more electricity than we actually need to use for our base. So everything seems to be turning in our direction.
Okay, does anybody have anything for the city manager?
Yes. I read about, would you like to weigh in a little bit on this park master plan?
I have been talking to Councilman Savet quite a bit, obviously, his experience in the park areas, and the concept is to have an overview to report back to this council so that you can make some educated decisions about how to upgrade our parks. Where do we need to spend the money, where we can spend it most effectively, and how to get new resources for our parks. And that's a very important aspect of the Parks Master Plan. So we have interviewed 2 firms. We expect to interview a 3rd firm, perhaps a 4th firm, to have a master plan presented to the Parks Commission and also presented to the Planning Commission and ultimately to City Council. Our parks are okay. Because of people like John Resco and the way you have placed your own resources, the parks got an awful lot better last summer, especially as it relates to the baseball fields. They're going to get even better and beyond that. And I look at that as an economic development tool. If we want somebody to build a new housing development in Newton Falls, we better have parks that are up to snuff. Other communities are doing things for their parks. The finance director talked about the fact that we're getting this new playground equipment. But there's a lot more that we can do. And this master plan isn't just going to be telling us how we can spend more money, but also how we can generate more money to do these things. Councilman Alberini has talked a lot about how you go to other communities like Solon and other communities, and you walk into the parks, and you feel like it's the entrance to Augusta National in Georgia. You know, the spectacular beauty that they have. Well, we don't have to be second place in that regard. And this Parks Master Plan, I think is going to help us get over the hump and be to that point. We don't have to have B- or C-level parks anymore. We can have A+ parks, and the city's financial condition is strong enough that I think we're going to be in a position that we can leverage that, and when people start building new housing developments in Newton Falls, by virtue of that, bringing new industry to Newton Falls by virtue of that, bringing new commercial development because of that, going over to the areas where recreational activity can be along the river. What Newton Falls looks like in the next 5 to 10 years can be dramatically different, and the parks can play an important role. And the parks plan, master plan, is a very important part of it. We have to stop considering how to deal with our parks on a Band-Aid here and a Band-Aid there philosophy. We have to stop doing that. I want you to be proud of every single park that we have in this community, and the master plan will help get us there, believe it or not.
Well, how much do you anticipate this costing?
The Parks Master Plan?
Yeah.
My anticipation is it will be anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000 for that plan.
When you brought this to council, sir, there was nothing talked about money. There was nothing talked about any money. We said, we gave him the opportunity, this council, to come with a comprehensive plan. With his experience, I was under the impression that he was going to work with Mr. Schaefer and maybe the zoning man that are there every day and come up with something. Now, we've already got one company, YSU, helping us to get grants. The question I want to ask right now, will this be involved in maybe closing some of the parks?
Well, first of all, closing parks
I
doesn't...
asked the question. Was this going to be part of it? Maybe we're going to close some of the parks. Do you think that will be part of it?
I doubt it.
Or you doubt it, or can you give me a definite no?
I haven't seen the plan.
Oh,
You asked me what's in a book before I've opened it up yet, before it's been written yet. Let's let the book get written, then read it. By the way, John, Councilman Bariak, those decisions are going to be up to this council. It's got to be up to the master planners. It's be up to the city council. It's going to be up to you. Do you plan on closing some parks?
I don't want to close any parks.
Great.
And my position is this: each development has a reason for having a park. And I think there's still an old ordinance on the book, maybe they can find it, that every new development is to be built in this town was to have a park. Instead of us wanting to close the parks, and where are we getting all this money
Nobody's
anyhow?
talking about closing parks.
That's what I want to know. Are we going to close, is this an excuse or a way to just to close some of the parks?
The answer is this.
Why don't we think this way too then? Why don't we let Mr. Schaefer, if we can't afford, and where are we getting all this money? I mean, are you sure we're going to get all these grants?
Yes.
Well, you're positive.
Yes, from where I sit right now, yes.
And what would the grant money be used for?
Well, there are different kinds of grants for different things, so we'd be here for a long time going through the entire list of available grants and how they apply. Some are for studies, some are for recreational equipment, some are for recreational support staff, some are for design concepts, all kinds of grants out there.
Do you feel that we have to pay a professional people to come in here that don't know our community, like Mr. Schaefer, just the people that are here 24/7, that know what's going on, to give us some kind of special guidelines? I mean, I can't understand it. Maybe the parks aren't being used that much right now. Are they going to tell us, yeah, they're not being used that much right now?
John,
I mean,
You've been asking questions, but I'm trying to provide you some answers, less the rhetorical
What are they going to
questions.
tell us that we can't tell ourselves?
Well, there are a couple of things. One of the things we've talked about is having meetings throughout the community. A few weeks ago, when the subject came up with Councilman Savet and the rest of us, we talked about the idea of establishing some community meetings. As a matter of fact, we had people stand at that podium say, why don't you come out to the neighborhoods and meet with us? And I think those are going to be part of the process that's help us get more information. We also have a Parks Commission. It doesn't make sense to bury your head in the sand and say, we don't want the information. Harry Shaver will be part of that information. Councilman Stimpert, I think, will be part of that process as well. But the fact is that we need to communicate with our citizens. And part of the planning part of it is communicating with the citizens and finding what they want. All those people that came up and talked about Elizabeth Street were saying to us, why don't you communicate with us? And I think that's part of the process.
We can't do that without paying somebody $25,000 or more. We can't send out hey, we're going to have a meeting, come to the meeting. We can't send out one of your managerial, whatever you call those things, newsletter to that ward. It wouldn't cost that much to get input in that. We need to spend it. I'd rather spend the money look, Mr. Schaefer's is short on help. And for $25,000, we could hire a couple guys, pay them what we need is labor. We need labor to help out. I just don't believe the money's justified. And I didn't hear anything when here's a man that's a professional. And if he can't do the job, why do we need outside firms? What are they going to really, I don't know, that's my position.
Mr. Alberti. Sorry, I had my hand, yeah. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say this. Mr. Bariak's comments at the last meeting was a definition of insanity, of doing the same thing.
Excuse me?
I have the floor. I have the floor. Please show some respect.
Doing the same thing over and over. Okay,
Please show some respect.
Please reference yourself, sir.
I'm referencing you, okay? That's what you said. And I'm saying in the professional sense, okay? Sometimes we live in a cocoon here in Newton Falls where we don't see what other communities are doing as far as our parks goes. I've had the opportunity, I've been blessed to travel all over Ohio and see some wonderful parks, see the fountains, see the floral arrangements in their parks. I've shared this vision with the city manager. I've shared it with Lyle. You know, you don't travel around like I do, so I've had that opportunity to see what other people are doing. So if we want to continue to have the same look at our park, then we might as well not do anything else. I'm for getting other eyes to look at our community to see what we can do to improve that park. I have no issue whatsoever. Another point I want to make is that when I mentioned a couple months ago about having floor arrangements in the park, a couple of the ladies in the community called me and thought, geez, that's a great idea. So I'm all for getting another set of eyes, and it's going to cost us some money. Anytime you invest in the community, or anytime you invest in your business, you have to spend something up front. Nothing is free, John. Go ahead, Zach, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So we have, in the city, we have been taking a very bubbled approach to our parks in terms of we will fix this item, we will add this item without a plan to guide us on what we want in year 1, what we want in year 5, what we want in year 10, what we want in year 25. Without that plan, without that document to guide us, we're going to have a very hodgepodge type of park system within the community, and it's not going to be advantageous for our residents to use them, A, and then it won't be advantageous for people to move into the community because those parks are not a cohesive unit.
I just do not want to see any of the parks closed, because I'd like all the residents to know that these parks add property value to their property. When you have a park in your neighborhood, when the people don't have to go all the way across town, and maybe like Elizabeth Street, I agree with the position, nobody really has used it. They mow the grass. It doesn't need to have playground equipment and all that, but if somebody wants to go out and chip a ball with maybe once a year with a putter or do something, it's there. It's there for the neighborhood. If one person uses it once every 2 years, I just don't want to see any of the parks closed down. I want to see more open. I want to improve this community. The quality is as many parks as we have, not getting an excuse to close them down.
Well, and it's not a,
If I can have that,
Second and
That's-
final address, Mr. Mayor.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, your permission.
Go ahead, yes.
I don't recall that anybody up here said the parks were going to close. I think you brought that up. Nobody up here said anything about parks closing. I didn't hear Mr. Lynch say parks closing. I heard Mr. Lynch taking
We
proactive.
went through this one with Elizabeth Street here a while back about,
I didn't hear that conversation tonight.
when I tried
I'm
to get, I
sorry.
wanted to ask a question about
That's
it, sir.
fine.
All right.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, anything else before we move on to the major?
I didn't get an answer to my question. Did this council authorize the money for a study? I don't remember it.
Yeah, we have funding available through our professional services account if we so choose. But I'll come back to this council before that happens. Fair enough?
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the presentation. Do we have everything set for Major Sean Robinson?
We're going to do it the old-fashioned way.
I'm well, sir. How are you? Thank you.
Is there a way, do you want us to hold this? Is there a way to look at this? I can do it from the camera. Or you could put it down there? I don't know. Sorry.
That's okay. Having technology fail you at the critical moment is not uncommon in the Army, so. So this brief that I'm about to present, luckily was created by myself, so I have intimate knowledge of it. Also, it was intended, the governor was going to come to our post. I was going to say, I think I have one left here. Thank you, sir. So the opening comments are not by Major General Harris this evening, they're by me. So first of all, Mayor and council members, it's my honor to come here and brief you tonight. Throughout my childhood, my father liked to remind myself and my brothers that he was the lion of the family. So as the son of a lion, I'm a little bit intimidated. We're here with all these lion hunters tonight. But, yes, sir. But I'll do my level best to get through this. So, Major Sean Robinson, I am the garrison commander at Camp James A. Garfield. This brief was intended to kind of familiarize the governor and some of the cabinet members that were planning to attend about the capabilities in the very near future of our post. Mr. Savette was kind enough to attend. He thought this might have value, so he asked me if I wouldn't mind repeating some of the brief to the council members and the mayor. Many of these things in here you might already be familiar with. I'll just touch on them briefly, a little bit about the history, because you don't need that much of a history lesson on our capabilities. So I usually start off with some table setters. I talk about the Ohio National Guard as an operational force. The National Guard was originally intended to be a strategic reserve. So if there was a World War III or there was a state event where we needed to pull the people up, that's what the intent was for our forces. But in the last 10 to 12 years, we and many other National Guards have become more of an operational force. More than a third of our strength right now is deployed overseas in contingency operations in Afghanistan and Kuwait. I had the honor of serving twice in Iraq and once in Afghanistan myself. So it's very common now for Ohio National Guard members to be more deployable, and that merits some of the construction, some of the range of assets that are being built at our post. So we're no longer a strategic reserve, definitely an operational force. Also, major training sites like mine don't encumber the same hurdles of building on top of an old munitions plant. They go to a nice new piece of ground somewhere and just start building ranges and training areas. Well, we have to overcome the obstacles of the former munitions arsenal. We have to overcome the earth-covered magazines. We have to overcome a lot of the old rail beds, and of course, areas of concern, which I'll address in a future couple of slides. And then lastly, our mission is to become Ohio's premier training facility. It's troubled me that throughout my 33-year career that I would have to travel to a Camp Grayling, Michigan or a Camp Atterbury in order to conduct our annual training or conduct training and not be at home in our own home state. So what Camp James A. Garfield is going to supply is a premier training site for Ohio soldiers, at a minimum Ohio soldiers, to come train on our post. So getting into a little bit of the history. The Ravenna Arsenal built between 40 and 42. In the top right corner you see some of the munitions. It was a 155 round. That was mostly what was produced here. There was many types of munitions, but mostly the 155 high explosive round. I've seen several reputable reports that showed that during World War II, the majority of the munitions dropped in Germany in that theater was produced by the Ravenna Arsenal. You see a little homestead down in the left-hand corner. What that represents is one of the persistent myths I've heard since I've been in command is that my grandparents or my great-grandparents were forced off their land. The government used eminent domain to acquire their land. And that's not true. All the records are still to this day easily attainable on many government websites, and it shows that all the parcels that were privately owned were purchased. The landowners were given 90 days to vacate, which is a little bit unusual, but everything was purchased, so no one was forced off their land. And at its height, 17,000 workers were employed at the Ravenna Arsenal. The next slide is intended to show that during the war effort, they were intentionally crashing many aircraft on the post. They wanted to test the viability of the munitions to survive an airplane crash. They wanted to test how fuel reacted. They were testing many things. They weren't taking a whole lot of, they weren't taking precautionary measures. They were just fighting a war effort. So many times the oil, the fuel, the different things leaked directly into the ground. They also built buildings with asbestos, and they built buildings with lead. At the time, that's the way they did business. Looking back through the lens of time, that was not a good idea, and it forces us to have environmental measures to clean it up. But that's how they did it back then. So there are several areas on our post that are identified as areas of concern. We were never a Superfund site. We were always at the cusp of environmental areas of concern, but 95% of those areas have been remediated, and there isn't a training area or a range on post that's unusable due to environmental concerns. And as a matter of fact, we're proud about this, is that we received the Assistant Secretary of the Army's award for environmental last year. Many community members were out there. They came out with Mr. Morgan and his team to laud praises on the work that has been done in providing and winning the award. And this was for the entire Department of the Army. We won the award for our efforts in cleanup at our post. So I get into the timeline, and again, this was more for the governor and his staff to get them some situational awareness on how it moved through a federal agency, the Ravenna Arsenal moved up through, and the Ohio National Guard became caretakers of the entire post. So I don't want to bore you going through that. I'm going to move to where it says current ranges and training venues, a couple slides down. The reason I like to use this slide in a briefing is it shows you that every square inch of our post is accounted for in some way, shape, or form. Between light maneuver areas, heavy maneuver areas, bivouac sites, ranges, training areas, shoot houses, buildings, everything on our post, all 22,000 acres, has some kind of plan for what we're going to be doing in the future and making us a premier regional training site. On the 18th of October 18, the next slide, we became Camp James A. Garfield, named after President Garfield, the 20th president. He served in the Ohio National Guard as a major general. He had 2 sons that served as officers in the Ohio National Guard. So in order to make a clean break from the Ravenna name, because previously it was Ravenna Army Depot, it was Ravenna Ordnance Plant, Ravenna Arsenal, Camp Ravenna, the tags, the Adjutant General's intent, Major General Harris, was to make a clean break and say, draw a line in the sand and say, moving forward, we're going to be Camp James A. Garfield because of how we are improving our post and making us into a regional training site. The next slide talks a little bit about our doctrine. So in the last 12 to 15 years, the American Army has fought a counterinsurgency fight. We've fought on these things called FOBs, they're forward operating bases. And from these bases, we would conduct operations, we conduct security and support operations, we conduct convoys and missions, but we'd always return to the FOB. So the thinking has changed to what's called a Return to the Woods initiative. We're getting away from just being static in place and fighting from one place, because we realize that near-peer threats now with places like China and Russia, places like in South America, Honduras, and South Korea, North Korea, places like that, they offer threats that we won't be able to just build a base and fight from. So we're learning what's called the Return to the Woods initiative, so we can re-hone our field craft, we can be able to come in, set up, run our missions, and then pack up and move to some other place. It's called asymmetric non-linear warfare, and that's kind of what we're learning. So the one thing that Camp James A. Garfield has to offer is plenty of training area and plenty of woods, 22,000 acres of woods. So we bring that opportunity to the table. Our new cantonment area, if you travel down Route 5 towards Ravenna and you see what we call our main gate, where the stone James A. Garfield sign is, you'll be able to see some of this new buildings. Most of this represents a $37 million investment we have right now. They're all open contracts nearing completion. They have buildings that are maintenance facilities. They're buildings that provide battalion and company headquarters assets. One of the buildings is our post headquarters. One of the buildings are DPW, which is Department of Public Works, so that we can maintain, but all the colored buildings represent new or improved buildings on top of the ranges we're building for the live fire strategy. And this would be right behind the static display there on Route 5 if you're driving down the road. I had the ability to drive Mr. Tibetan around so he could see it. But the 3 primary live fire ranges that help us are the ARF range, the Automated Record Fire Range, which is M16 rifle, which is the individual weapons qualification, the basic qualification any soldier must complete every year. A multi-purpose machine gun, which allows us to do machine gun platform firing off of vehicles, off of a tripod. This would be heavy machine gun like 50 caliber, 240 caliber, heavy sniper, things like that. And then a combat pistol qualification course, which lets us qualify all the officers and enlisted that have to use a pistol to qualify. So annually, a soldier is required to qualify with their weapon at least once during the year on one of these range, one of these weapon systems. So the so what of this is the next slide. So why does this matter? Why spend all this money on the ranges? Well, typically in the National Guard, or typically when you're just trying to have a quality year, you'll qualify on the paper target. So if you look at the slide, you see in the top, that's a 25-meter target where you're just zeroing your weapon. But then on the left is just a paper target, which is also 25 meters away, which would be from you to maybe the back of the room. You're going to qualify with your weapon. Not very challenging. Doesn't give you a lot of confidence in your weapon. Doesn't give you a confidence in your lethality as a soldier. But the ranges are being built. On the right, you see this is a 3D target that's popping out of what we call a target coffin. So it presents anywhere from 100, 150, 200, 250 out to 300 meters. So now it's more challenging as a soldier. It tests your ability to control your breathing, have your sight picture, do all the techniques we train. And it also gives you more confidence in your lethality that you can go to a battlefield and engage targets. So that's the so what of what these ranges mean. $7.6 million for the NPMG range, $3.7 million for the ARF range, and $2 million for the CPQC. Again, I had the opportunity to take Mr. Savet through. He could see all these firsthand. We will be conducting this spring a first shot ceremony opening up these ranges, so you will be invited, and I hope you come. The last thing that we really offer commanders and units is heavy vehicle maneuver area. As you know, a couple years ago, there was a Class 1 death accident on Route 5 where father and son ran into a Humvee, and those vehicles are built stoutly, and the civilian vehicle didn't stand a chance, and the father and the son died. But it's more important for us to practice not on civilian roads, but within the own confines of our own post. So the space we have, the ability to drive, the ability to go out there, that's what really means the most to commanders, is they can have repetitions and at-bats in the different vehicle systems so that the soldiers feel comfortable driving their tanks and their Humvees and their Bradleys and just become more comfortable. So what we expect, I was explaining at the Trumbull County Commissioners meeting earlier today, on a typical year, our throughput of soldiers is about 11,500 coming through training. We typically train a company size element, which is 200 men or less. Right now, we could afford to put a battalion-sized element, but our ultimate goal is a brigade-sized element, which would be 2,000 to 2,500 soldiers for a 15-day annual training period. And that's a sizable city, just basically moving into our post and running operations through our post and training. And we can repeat that 6 to 8 times throughout the summer. Our sister Camp Perry is up on Lake Erie. They have a very nice range, lots of nice ranges. However, they have a intimate relationship with the NRA, and they conduct the national matches every year, the national rifle matches. From a soldier standpoint, that's all well and good, but it infringes on our quality training time in the middle of the summer. Is basically they black it out. You can't go there and train. Well, we can do that. We can allow Ohio soldiers and other soldiers from other states and units. We're already fielding calls from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia, about when our ranges will be open so they can come train here. We already train with outside law enforcement agencies. We train with Homeland Defense. We train with Marines and Reserve and Naval Reserve. So it's a very small cost for them to come train at our post. $22 a day is what the range costs are. So we're not in the business of making money off a range. We're in the business of providing a training asset to as many units that want to come work with us. So with that throughput, we're expecting more soldiers on base. I would surmise, I can't put a number on it, like economic impact, but we would probably be using a lot more of the gas stations, the restaurants, the Rite Aid stores, grocery stores, things like that. We anticipate right now our growth to be about a throughput of annually from 11,500 to about 17 to 20,000 soldiers training annually at our post. And that will be hopefully beginning 2021 when all the ranges are complete. So that was a quick and dirty synopsis of what's going on and what we're doing. I would love to field any questions that council members or the mayor might have.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure there's a point here with the city. The police department can use that range. We just got to get an MOU set up with Camp Garfield. So if you could get that sent over. And
Yes, sir. I got a financial director, and I also have a range control that runs all those things that work for me, sir. And I don't know the intimate exactly what it says, but I know that Akron law and Youngstown law and Kent law all come train on our post, so it should be exactly the same. Sir.
Major Robinson, I had the opportunity few months ago to fly down to Joint Base Charleston and watch what was going on down there. The training that they do and the manufacturing that they're doing, and instead of using Boeing and that, they're manufacturing their own parts and stuff for the planes and that now. And you watch how the Air Force is doing their things, and I assume it's, somewhat the same across all the branches of the service. And I don't know what the Army does. With the missile defense system sitting out there and still hoping that it comes to this area, do you see any thing in the future where there might be places on the base where you might do either some light manufacturing or some repair work, say, of your military vehicles or your weaponry, instead of farming them out or something? Do you see anything like that happening in the future out there? 3D printing? Well, 3D printing, 3D, yeah.
Yes, sir. Excellent question, sir. And there's a couple things you mentioned that I want to address, and I hope I get to your point, so just give me a little bit of rope and see if I don't hang myself. But couple things. I didn't mention the MDA because what happened was the MDA was part, I checked today, Mr. Savet, that the MDAA, the Military Defense Authorization Act, there was $4 billion approved in the last MDA, and my good friend Vito said to me today it wasn't, but it was there. The money was approved. Now, then the Missile Defense Command said, but even though we have the money, they'd say we would pick Fort Drum if we were going to pick anyone, but we're not going to pick anyone, so they're not doing it. So I've heard back and forth with the MDA. I didn't include in this brief because we were told not to mention it in front of the governor, but the MDA is still on the table. It's still something that could become. I know that Senator Portman was leading the charge against Fort Drum. I know that all of our senators and congressmen nationally signed, in support for us as the final candidate. It may or may not come. It's a $4 billion contract. They estimated $325 million economic impact to the surrounding communities for that project. But we'll see. That's sort of pie in the sky for us right now. That's number one. You mentioned the Air Force, and I wanted to, something else I didn't include in the brief, and this was just a quick brief, is that we have a good relationship with YARS, the Youngstown Air Reserve Station. Their air wing uses us every Tuesday and Thursday to practice their drops on our Schlegel drop zone. We do have some designs for a MILCON project that would put a dirt land strip on the post within the drop zone, which would encourage more joint efforts between the Air Force and us. And part of the new doctrine is what they call multidimensional, so that's the different branches working together, the Air Force, the Army, the Marines, and Navy, so training and working together, so that's something that could be in the very near future. But I believe your question was asking specifically, do I see where we would be on post, repair and different things? And I'll tell you, as a matter of fact, sir, they've talked about the amount of concrete being produced on our post, that they might have some concrete production, they might have something where they contract people to work right off of our post to become a concrete producer for surrounding communities or wherever, just as a cost-saving measure because of so much concrete is predicted in our master plan. That's one thing I know of. The other things, there could be some, depending on the shift in thinking of what they want to produce, small parts, different things on our post. Right now, we're just grabbing assets and bringing things in the post as fast as we can, and what comes in the near future is up to higher officers than me, so, yes, sir.
Major Robinson.
Yes, sir.
When you said that, is it 95% you said, sir, is eradicated, cleaned up?
Remediated, yes, sir.
Remediated, excuse me.
Yes, sir. That's the term they give me, so go ahead.
Was the burning grounds really a high-ticket item to clean that up?
Winkle-Peck Burning Grounds was a definite area of concern. I want to say, and I'm $3 million without my environmental officer, who's Mr. Morgan here, I want to say $3 million was the ticket to finish cleaning that. And that was part of that, where I was showing you some of the things they were doing out there. That area is the base for where our new MPMG, the multi-person machine gun range, is coming.
Yes.
So we would not have been able to put that under contract and start seeking bids if we hadn't have gotten Army Corps of Engineers. There's several places that have come out and vetted and say, yes, that Winkle-Peck Burning Grounds is now clear, now easy for you to do. But $3 million, I believe, sir, is my best guess of where that number came in to finish Winkle-Peck off.
A lot of money.
And that's been since, I believe, since 1960s, they started investing cleanup out there. So it's been 40, 50 years of money in that to get that area where it is now so we can finally use it. So, sir.
You mentioned having a concrete provider on site? Is that from the private sector, or is that government that's going to provide the concrete?
You know, sir, I don't know, but I was answering Mr. Waddell's question, thinking about, he's asking, do I see purveyors coming on post to work out of the post, so small parts, repair, those kind of things? And that's the first thing that came to mind was, that was one of the conversations they were talking about, the amount of concrete.
Right,
It would make
right.
fiscal sense to have someone on post that was going to produce the concrete there. So I imagine that's probably a contractor, not a government,
Understand.
not a government asset.
Didn't we talk about that a year?
There was a
and half
couple of
ago?
year and a half ago where they had talked about this same project, and some of the local contractors, Sidley and them, wanted to make sure that when it did happen, that they would be in on that, because they wanted to at least put a bid in it, so that was with the that was part of that, but yeah, there was some discussion on that.
So that might be the same discussion I've heard since I came in into command. Yes, sir.
Thank you, good information, sir.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Mr. Svet.
One, can you touch a little bit on the demolitions that's still required at the base? Because I think I find those numbers to be a little stark in terms of what still needs to happen at base in terms of the existing infrastructure.
Yes, sir. So when you travel our base, when I began, they were in demo phase 2. Now, that was 2.5, almost 3 years, and they're in demo phase 4. And this year, the big ticket that's coming down is, if you're familiar with the old rec center, the old bowling alley, that's in the process of coming down. Right now, they've got it kind of, the walls are coming down. A few of the Group 8 buildings off of Paris Wyndham Road has come down. But it's still just enormous, the amount of property that we still have that needs to be demolished. Again, as the commander, I wish we could blank slate it all and just wipe it all out. I know that one earth-covered magazine, what people refer to as the bunkers or the igloos, is between $25,000 and $35,000 to totally break that down, demolish the concrete, and bring back the earth and everything else. And we have over 600 still of those on post. All of the buildings and everything on post, we represent a total 1/7 of the entire Army's demolition projects are just on our post. So we've demolished a lot. We spent a lot of money in demolition in 3 years I've been there, and it's just a drop in the bucket of what still needs to be done, so. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So the village you're demolishing right now was built in about 1942.
Most between 1940 and 1942. Yes,
And the
sir.
reason why you demolish them is because you don't use them anymore?
There's a formula they use at state. We have what's called DIMER, which is Directorate of Installation Management and Resources.
Right.
And they look at the value of the property.
You got it.
Yeah, DIMER, Director of Installation Management Resources. They look at the value of what it costs to demolish it versus what they would have to invest in it to make it more viable, more usable. And there's several of them. I don't know if you know where the housing was, the family housing on post is behind the new cantonment area. I walked through these houses, were beautiful. They were hard wood floors, didn't creak, banisters. It looked like they were maybe 10 years old, and they're, over 60 years old. And just because of the amount of lead and asbestos and all the remediation that had to be done for those houses, it was non-viable. It was more viable just to tear them down.
You answered a long-running question here for me, Newton Falls.
Yes, yes, sir. So they have a formula where they know what it costs to do it, and they follow that.
Major?
Yes, sir.
I set pins at that bowling alley when I was in high school in 63, 64. I could still remember those pins busting me in the leg.
Oh, yes, sir.
20 cents a line. That's when I started paying Social Security.
Oh, my goodness. Well, hopefully you can collect on that pretty soon, and you know that now it's coming down.
I'm getting a little bit now. I know the years
Yeah.
have been good to me.
It's getting, the pins are getting it back now, so.
And then just one last thing I
Yes,
think
sir.
for all of council too, is make sure to touch a little bit on the utilities that you guys are gonna, see in the future that you're gonna need.
Yes, sir. We are 11 miles long and 3 miles wide, 22,000 acres. And when you drive all around my post at night, it's dark, right? It's not like any of the other cities. I like when you look at a Google map picture of our post, you can see the exact outline. It's all solid green. There's no development because there's no infrastructure. And as I said before, we anticipate growing to, my hometown is Rittman, Ohio. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rittman, Ohio, but that's my hometown. And, they've got 2,600 folks that live there. And Rittman, Ohio, if I tried to move every single buddy in Rittman, Ohio into our post for 2 weeks, and you have to contract all the latrines and all the life support and all the showers and everything else. It's a daunting task, and that's what we're attempting to do with very, very limited infrastructure. We got a good blessing from Portage County. We ran a main line down through Portage County, down through our Cantonment area, from Paris Wyndham Road up in the north down. But we are kind of starving for utilities. We're starving for water sewer. We're starving for the fiber electric. Yes, sir, especially fiber lines. One of our contracts that's kind of working with DLA right now, we would have a more attractive bid if we had better electric and sewer and water. So, but that's a fight, we have installation management, that's their purview, that's something they're working on, and I'm very grateful for what we've been given, but there's, as Mr. Savet is alluding to, there's just a lot of opportunity for that and even more. Okay. so-
Power-wise, yep.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, have we recognized one? Well, first of all, thank you for your service,
Yes, sir, it's an honor to serve. Honor to serve.
and thank you to all the men that are at your base, men and women coming
Yes, sir.
through your base. This example of democracy takes place because of your sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Secondly, from a selfish standpoint, we want to be your best neighbor, not only as it relates to the issue of supplying some of these things in our utilities if we can. I just turned to my assistant and said, make sure we call this guy tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
But, go ahead, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir. I just want to make it clear that, and most of you probably know Colonel Meade, Colonel Ed Meade, my predecessor. One of the first things I was impressed with when I came up here and did a walk around with Colonel Meade was all of the relationships he had with the surrounding community. He had a lot of great relationships with the surrounding community. I live in Akron now, but he was a member of this community, so he was able to really embrace this. So we welcome all of our relationship with our neighbors. However, sir, the one thing I want to make clear is Major Robinson is the commander of Rennet. I am not the person who signs contracts with electric and sewer. I'm not the people who make decisions and enter into memorandums of agreement or any of those other things. So, but I can put you in touch, sir, with those right people.
That's
As
quite
long as
key.
you understand that, it comes, from just the conduit to the.
Yeah,
to
well,
the guys
anyways,
who-
the second half of my comment was that one of the reasons we want to be a good neighbor is that your location in the very adjacent proximity to Newton Falls, and as you probably may or may not know, we recently purchased property at 5 and 534 right across from that corner. But in any case, your proximity is so important. Last year, when it was announced that Lordstown was closing operations, one of the things that was discussed on this council, and some of these councilmen said, boy, we better tighten our belts because the Newton Falls economy is going to start shrinking because of the impact of Lordstown.
Oh, yes, sir.
Little did we know that as you continued your activities and expanded, the economic impact of the existence of this close to Newton Falls ended up having an impact on Newton Falls. Last year, the Newton Falls village economy expanded by 8% in the midst of the closing of the Lordstown
Lordstown.
plant. When you talked about the economic impact, you talked about going to the stores and so forth, you can't go to the Covered Bridge on any day without seeing people from your base eating at the Covered Bridge restaurant.
Yes, sir.
The point is that one of the reasons for the economic success we're having right now in Newton Falls, apart from the good economy generally, is because of the insulator effect that your base has had on our local economy, and I thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. So, and I intend that intends to grow, sir. Should grow. There's going to be more soldiers training in our base, we're adding capabilities, we're attracting more soldiers, so we hope that continues to grow. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Harry started digging out water line, that's.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? I really enjoy the questions because it spurs the conversation and gives me more things to present to council. So any other questions?
Thank you so much for coming.
It's my great honor. I'm glad Mr. Savet invited me, so my great honor.
Thanks, Major.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening, and Mr. Savet knows how to get a hold of me.
Yes.
We should adjourn now, Mr. Chairman. How do you follow that act?
Yeah, I know, right?
We're going to go over Miss Bremeyer's to have stew. Go over Miss Bremeyer's to have stew. I want to
leave early, huh?
Yeah, I'm hungry.
Do we have any public comments? All right, any changes to tonight's agenda? All right. Approval of previous minutes.
So moved, I got a motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Roll call?
Alberini? Yes. Savant?
Yes.
Bariak? Waddell?
Yes.
Braymire?
Yes.
Okay,
Can I be recognized real quick?
sure.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the appointment to the Civil Service Commission. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
What was that, sir?
Motion to reconsider the reappointment to the Civil Service Commission
Who's that?
of, what was his name from last week? I'm sorry.
Terry Coons.
Terry Coons, thank you. Sorry.
Terry Coons. He doesn't want it?
There may be another person interested in the position.
Second.
First and second, okay. Mr. Savant, did you vote for that motion?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so Matt made the motion, Alberini seconded. Okay,
If you voted for it, you can't bring it back up, can you, Mr. Fritz? Is
That's the
that-
exact opposite. If you voted for it,
Excuse me.
you have to have voted yes in order to come up for reconsideration. That's why I asked.
okay, do we have any discussion on that then?
Who's the person that they want to,
Well, you gotta vote on this first. before you-
It's not a debatable motion, I don't think.
It is.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. The motion with a second, the motion's on the floor. You should be asking for discussion.
Yeah. Do we have any discussion on that, Mr. Barrio?
I don't understand, we put the man on here, nobody wanted it. I've never heard of anything like this before. Now that the man's been appointed, everybody had ample time. We went through this on the appointment of Mr. Waddell to that seat. He had ample time to put in for it. Nobody put in for it, was his argument. He put in for it in the right amount of time. We didn't, and the other people didn't put in for it in the right amount of time, and now we're gonna go back and let somebody jump.
Well, that's
What?
actually, that was the question I wanted to ask. Was there a deadline set? And he met the deadline? Is this correct?
There's no specific.
There was no deadline.
There was no specific deadline
No.
set for that
Nope.
position?
There was not.
All right, any other discussion?
How do you tell a man you appoint him and you voted for him and then you now?
So, enlighten me on what you're trying to accomplish here then, with this motion.
I always, I was trying to think of how to, should I say this correctly? I always like to consider options with appointments. There was a option that was presented to me, but I don't know if that option is always the best option. That's sort of making sense at all.
Oh, is this on change the agenda?
This was
What was this on?
after.
Wait, excuse me.
This is a separate motion, sir. He's asking, before we get into any other business, he put on the floor a motion to reconsider the appointment of Mr. Kuntz to one of the committees, which committee was it?
Civil service.
Civil Service.
Does that take four,
So that, excuse me, John, so you have an alternative candidate there, is that what you're saying?
I do not have an alternative candidate at this point. I don't know
Okay.
if the city does, though.
does that take four people to pass that motion tonight because it wasn't put on the agenda? Does that take four votes?
I have to check, sir.
I think it does, sir,
Yeah.
and I won't vote for it.
No, it appears it's a superior motion because it's previously on the agenda. He's asking to reconsider. As long as somebody who brought the previous motion up and agreed with it, brought up the motion to reconsider, takes precedence and acts like any other motion. So it appears that you only need 3 votes.
Okay,
This is a change to the agenda, though, isn't it, Mr. Fritz?
There are motions
What
on
is this, sir? What are we doing this under? Excuse me,
the
I'm
motion to
confused.
reconsider.
All right, under what part of the meeting is this being done in?
Certain motions take precedence and can be brought at any time during the meeting. They don't have to be listed. So it's a motion to call the vote. These are standard parliamentary motions that are brought forth during the course of the meeting. I did a quick look down. It appears that it's a proper motion. It has to be done at the original meeting or the first or the next session. After that, you can't reconsider. I believe we did this appointment at the last meeting, so it is now a regular motion before 3 votes passes it if it's accepted.
I call the vote.
okay. No other comments? Roll call?
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
No.
Waddell.
Yes.
Braymire.
No.
Alberini.
Yes.
I just revoked. I'm going to double check, sir. Thank you. Can you hold on 1 second, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Takes precedence. Motion can be removed. Affirmative votes carried out.
Well, Joe, you'll find it sometime, I hope. Read it to me. I want to hear it. I'd like to have him read that to me out of there. Please, sir, when you find it, both of, the first
Mr.
one.
Mark, I'm dealing with the question of whether or not we have to redo the original motion.
Can you read it to me?
I don't have the time to go through the 385 pages. in the
No,
information.
well, you're looking for something, read it to me. Read what you based your.
Mr. Mark, do you
thing on.
wish to read the whole section to reconsider? Is that what you wish me to read out loud?
No, just what you based it on real quick. You found it real quick.
These 6 pages, the motion to reconsider. Would you like me to read all 6 pages to you, sir?
Would you read can you find it real quick and in one?
I have. It's these 6 pages.
Would you read it?
The whole 6 pages?
Is it one page?
No, it's 6. Well, minimum is 1, 2, 3.
Well, you didn't read 6
4.
pages when you went to it. You went real
Sir,
quick.
I don't know if you realize this, but I don't have this book memorized, but I certainly have the ability to fast forward through sections in order to come with a section. There's 18 things that happen. I'll go through the sections if you wish, if the Mr. Mayor would want me to do that.
Can you just give me a?
Point of order. We can discuss this later on, if possible.
Oh, yeah.
Well, read what you
Effective
want.
effective document, motion to reconsider. Subsidiary provisions as motions.
That's okay, the public's watching.
I don't think the public expects me to have this book memorized.
You should have been ready for this, Joe.
How so, sir?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, hold on. So, we're going to move on after you find it or whatever.
Thank you, sir.
then you can bring it forward.
Different-
We don't have any public hearings, no unfinished business, new business.
Ordinance 2020-01, an ordinance making appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Newton Falls, Ohio, for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, and authorizing the finance director to amend and file a certificate of resources to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Any discussion?
Your Honor, if I can be recognized, members of council. On December 16th, we came up with the estimate for what the expenditures would be for the end of the year. As we close the books in 2019, what is before you are the actual expenditures. So what you're going to find overall is that the numbers are less than what you passed in December. So what I want is to bring you the actual figures. They are before you. We had a tremendous 2019 year. I'm asking you guys to pass this as an emergency because this needs to be filed with the Trumbull County Auditor's Office. And I would like to recognize the Finance Department. I would like to recognize Pamela Woodford and Tasha Zen. And myself, all three of us worked really hard on getting the books closed for the year. As I explained before, we are balanced to the penny. And there's a tremendous amount of work, and I could not have done this without all team members working on it. Now, obviously, the utility office has been working really hard, so I don't want to not recognize them as well, and that is Andrea Perkovich and Sue Barker. So for the 2019 appropriations, $2,247,530 is a general fund. And then this is on Exhibit A. Then we have our special revenue funds and our enterprise funds. But what is going to go to the Trumbull County Auditor's Office for the final numbers is $16,953,821.43. I just ask for your blessing to approve this as an emergency tonight.
Okay, Alberini made the motion, correct, and Savet seconded. Do we have any other comments, discussion, questions? Roll call?
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Raymeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-01, an ordinance making appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Newton Falls, Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, and authorizing the finance director to amend and file a certificate of resources to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
Roll call?
I have a quick question. I'd asked earlier about consideration to bring the clerk in line with other people of responsibility in their area. Do we know where we're at with that?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that one if I can be recognized.
Sure, go ahead.
We're dealing with the 2019, not the 2020.
That's correct.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I just misunderstood that one. Went right by that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, then I withdraw my request to be recognized,
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Chairman.
you.
You can go retroactive if you want.
No, do it retroactively? No,
No objection?
I tried.
Roll call?
Waddell.
Yes.
Raymeyer.
No.
Alberini.
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-02, an ordinance amending ordinance 2014-09, an ordinance establishing pay rates and positions for employees of the city of Newton Falls and declaring an emergency.
Have you heard, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On this matter, you passed a budget for 2020, which included a 1% pay increase for the employees. The finance director quite properly pointed out to me that she can't put that money in their paychecks because you also, in addition to putting in the budget, have to put it into the pay ordinance. That's what this does. That's all that it does. You've already passed the budget. You've already made a public declaration in favor of the 1% increase, but without a pay ordinance also, you can't do it, and that's what this does. And I hope that you pass it as an emergency because the effective date is actually February, so they're missing out on that 1 month, and they well deserve it. They've done a terrific job.
Okay, do we have any discussion on this? No. Okay, roll call?
Raymeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-02, an ordinance amending ordinance 2014-09, an ordinance establishing pay rates and positions for the employees of the city of Newton Falls, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. Whoever's clicking the pen.
So moved.
Because it's going
Second.
in
Alberini. Okay, roll call?
Alberini.
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Raymeyer.
Yes.
All right, Resolution 3-2020, a resolution of appreciation to Newton Falls Church of God, Rite Aid, Cars 2, and Richard Kolovich for working with the city of Newton Falls during construction at the intersection on State Route 534 by their businesses.
So moved.
Second. Go ahead, Lyle. Second.
Who's the second? Okay, any discussion?
If I could be heard briefly, Mr. Chairman. I sort of refer to this as the 2019, or was it 2020 when we actually got the work done? No, I think it was the end of 2019 Miracle of the Rite Aid intersection. And this was when we actually got the intersection, portions of it rebuilt right in front of the Rite Aid drugstore, despite the problem that we had with the state of Ohio not including that intersection. So how did we pull that off? Like, we congratulated the county engineer for their help, Gil Blair, our state representative, the members of city council getting behind this. But there's a little bit of an untold story which was revealed through this resolution. Rite Aid drugstore agreed to redirect traffic to their alternate driveway. The folks that operate this little used car lot called Cars 2 agreed to allow us to flow traffic up and down that intersection through their parking lot, and the Church of God agreed for us to redirect all that traffic through the Church of God. And I met with the police chief, we met with the planners, they all said, "You're crazy. There's no way that's going to work." I think it took them only 4 days to get the job done, and the folks at the Church of God helped us, Rite Aid helped us, and Cars 2 helped us, and we probably ran through 3,000 to 4,000 vehicles through those little areas just so we could get the work done. The purpose of this resolution is just to remind them how much we appreciate it. Talk about civic involvement. You know, any of those folks could have said, forget it. It's going to be too much of an aggravation. And the neat thing about all of this is we did it during weekdays between church services. So the Church of God actually didn't have their parking lot interrupted for the purposes of people getting it out on a Sunday, because it was done during the weekdays in between. And just a magnificent demonstration of civic cooperation. And I especially wanted to see that they are recognized.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? Roll call?
Savett.
Yes.
Bariak. Waddell.
Yes.
Freemeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yes.
Resolution 04-2020, a resolution authorizing the City of Newton Falls to dispose of unneeded equipment/property by sale to employees, public auction, or internet auction, or salvage pursuant to Section 721.15 of the revised code.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, roll-
Yes.
Okay.
Could we tell the public what's going to be,
Down at the bottom of your,
yeah, would
It's at the
you,
bottom of the resolution. It's listed.
on the disposal of property?
Yeah, it's in your,
Would you tell someone?
sure. I will read it from the resolution.
Yes, please.
Tractor 728D, frontline 28 horsepower diesel, gearbox drive, a cutting deck with a 72 side gearbox, HD, whatever that stands for. Every now and then, we have to get rid of some of our junk, and we're required by state law to ask you for permission to do it. Well, going once, going twice.
Okay, any other discussion?
Sound like it, right? Like I'm doing a commercial.
Roll call?
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Freemeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yes.
Savett.
yes.
You get to read that one.
Oh, okay. Motion to accept the Finance Director December 2019 report and attachments as submitted.
Second.
Okay, Alberini, Savett. Any discussion on that? Okay, roll call.
Waddell.
Yes.
Freemeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yes.
Savett.
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Okay. Same thing with the last one. Okay. Motion to donate $500 to Samantha Four to attend the Washington Youth Summit on the environment as a national youth delegate.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Yeah, I kind of have a question here. I don't have a problem supporting the kids, but are we getting ourselves in a situation where we open up ourselves to other young people who want to go places and things like that and have the city donate? So that was my question. I don't know if anybody can answer that.
Well, I don't know that they came to the city, and I guess we got a motion on the floor and a second, and it's, I guess, one of those things where you just kind of weigh it, I mean, I know the situation here with the Fours, that this is not a very common thing, if you know what I mean. It's a big honor.
Big honor.
So.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to a part of the question that Councilman Alberini had? The way this got to the floor, in case everybody's wondering, is the letter from Samantha Four came to the city manager's office.
Okay.
And, which is communication to the city manager's office. Will the city do something as it relates to this great honor that she's received? I don't think it's appropriate for the city manager to make a decision like that, because there are a lot of considerations involved. And so that's why I asked for the opportunity for it to go to the floor of city council to make a decision. But it is a pretty great honor. I guess if you really, to answer your question, Councilman, does that open us to other things? Yeah, I mean, somebody might be watching this broadcast, say, I'll send a letter to the city manager's office and see if he'll put it on the floor of that. And anytime I get a letter like that, sure,
Yeah.
I'll put it on the floor of city council to make a decision. That's not a comment on the validity or the propriety of requests like this. I think that the law director will back me up with the finance director that, we can't spend money unless there's a public purpose. Sending a young lady who's at our high school to fulfill this honor that she's been given to participate in the Washington Youth Summit, I think is a good thing. It has a public purpose, and I hope she goes. Does she have to raise money in order to be able to go? It looks that way to me from reading the letter, not only from Samantha, but from Rachel Rankin, who's the assistant principal over there and is the former school board president. Mr. Chairman, you might have even some better insight as to
I had my own letter at home.
the nature of this, program.
Did you really?
So,
Yes, I did.
Wow, I
in
commend
any
you.
case, I'm gratified that this has happened, but it really is, it should be, the purse strings of this town are controlled by the city council. So that's how it ended up in front of you.
Mayor, may I have an address? This is a very high achievement. And for us, just like a high honor that you had your daughter, who was one of the highest basketball honors, and I would have done that. This doesn't happen every day. We support our baseball league. We try to support, and this may be a future leader coming back to this town. How do you know? To lead this town. How do we show somebody that we care about our own?
I don't know when it comes to things like this, that we can put together guidelines or standards. I think it's just like other financial things that we have, that you have to weigh certain situations and look at it and vote on each individual case. So.
Yeah, can I address her? The honor is great. I would rather see, I'd rather donate $50. And if council members can donate $50 to get to the $250 instead of the city paying it out, I think that might be a little bit better way to go. Just because, where do we draw the line if the requests keep coming in? What do we draw the line at, and how do we make that determination? the thing that I'm looking at for the future is, like, would you, if I wasn't on city council and I came and said, oh, can you send me to the Park and Rec conference for the city, how do we weigh that, versus future request is my concern.
Mr. Chairman, I speak. I would say, I would probably vote for it this time, but I think a benchmark needs to be set in place for future considerations. That would be my only thing. So if we have some guidelines to go for, I'm all for the youth, succeeding in life and things like that. Any way we can to help them out, no problem. But I think going forward in the future, I think there needs to be some benchmark or some guidelines. Maybe we work with the school or somebody to say, here are the benchmarks we want to use to approve financing. After all, these people are taxpayers too as well, so.
Any other? Okay. So we got a motion, we got a second. Roll call?
Raymeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Okay, and hopefully anybody in TV land watching knows that, she needs all the help that she can get, so get with the Floor family and
Mr. Chairman?
help her out.
Can I suggest a brief suspension of the rules? It turns out, I didn't realize this, Samantha is here in person. And I think you would entertain a motion to suspend the rules. We could have her come to the, come in and have her come to the dais.
So moved, second.
You to call the roll on the suspension, I think, Mr. Chairman.
I need a second. Who seconded?
John did.
I second it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Roll call?
Alberini.
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Raymeyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I read your letter on the back there, and it sounds very interesting. So would you mind explaining to the public how excited you seem to be about this project?
Well, my biology teacher, Marion Donnelly, came to me, well, she came to multiple students and asked for us to try to go because she submitted my name and I had to apply. So none of the students wanted to do it because of the money. So I applied my name and we sent 50 letters out to different people. We sent all over Ohio and out of the state. And by going to this, we're going to the National Zoo. I get behind the scenes, the aquarium behind the scenes, different speakers come from across the nation to speak with me about problems we have in the country. I'm going to different fields of biology, which I'm a science geek. So I get to see water conservation and how to save the world, basically. So.
I'm all for that, yeah. You stick with us, we'll show you how to save the world. Congratulations.
Great job, great job.
You may get a little note that says, good luck and never give up.
Thank you.
Never give up on it.
She said thank you.
Do we need to make a motion to put rolls back in?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Savet.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell.
Yes.
Raymeyer.
Yes.
Alberini.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Okay, no, okay.
Mark.
Mark.
All right, let me go ahead and read our let me go ahead and read our guidelines real quick first. Unless prearranged, the public comment sections are limited to 3 minutes. The 3-minute timer is used, and when the timer sounds, you will be asked to conclude your statement. The comment sections in the agenda are not a debate or a question and answer session. The first public comment section is for agenda items only. Okay, and the final public comment section can be on any issue the public wishes. Okay.
Mark Stempert, 36 West Broad Street, zoning inspector of Newton Falls. I'm just here to remind each and every citizen, a local, or just a friendly reminder from the friendly zoning inspector. The weather is getting cold. The snow is flying. Therefore, I ask each citizen out there, especially all businesses, to be aware of all the snow bans, during the snowstorms and watch all the sidewalks. Let's make sure that we're clearing the sidewalks and not blocking the sidewalks. This last little snowstorm we had a couple of businesses blocking sidewalks. We do have a walking community here, as well as some people in wheelchairs, and we need to make sure that they're able to get out on the sidewalks and be able to use our sidewalks. And therefore, I would like to urge everybody, especially the businesses when they're plowing, not to block the sidewalks, and all the citizens to take care of their own sidewalks and to clear them. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? All right. Suppose we come to closing remarks. All right. For myself, just wanted to thank everybody here for working with me as I get my feet wet and, learn a little bit each meeting, and thank individuals for everybody here for your input tonight and for just working together. I mean, we don't all agree on everything, but conflict resolution's a great thing, and I think that's how you come up with the best solutions, is when we take a little bit from each individual, and that's why there's 5 council people and not just one. And then finally, in the community, I wanted to invite individuals Friday night to drive out to La Brea High School. It's not a very far drive. It's almost like a home game. If you don't know, the Newton Falls boys team is continuing to make history for the best start in Newton Falls history. They're 13-1 now, and I would encourage you to come out. Not only do they need cheered on or rooted on, we need to have a little bit of orange and black in that gym over there at La Brea, but individuals missing out are missing out. You're missing history being made. And so I just wanted to invite individuals, and that's all I have. We have city manager.
No further comments, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Freemeyer?
No, thank you.
Mr.
Yes. I'd like to expound just for a second, because we got a little bit into it, and the deal about the parks, I'd just like to give one more comment. Unless we get laborers to take care of the parks, this so-called master plan, we could revamp all the parks with roller coasters or whatever we want to do, and eventually they'll look the same like they do now. Why waste the money? We have Park and Recs members and representatives that tell us as elected officials their ideas, and we're the bottom line. We give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Surely someone up here, and may not be me, I may not be intelligent enough by myself, but as a whole, we operate as a whole, we can put our heads together and decide whether we're going to move the swings here or whether we're going to have this, and with public input from the neighborhood, that we don't need people to come in from the outside, we can determine that. And with $25,000 or so, surely we can come to some. Now, I understand what Terry's saying, doing the same thing over and over and getting the same results. Well, have we asked the public their input yet? Have we gone to the people? I just want to spend the tax dollars wisely. And Terry, it's a nice idea to have the highest quality parks, but they have to be maintained. And that's the bottom line, Terry. The bottom line is we have to, and I'm all for having a top shelf. I'd like to put the best out there, but are we going to be able to take care of it? Without any more said, thank you for your input tonight.
Mr. Chairman, can I be recognized briefly as a footnote to that? Thank you. One of the things, Councilman Bariak, your point is exceptionally well taken. Capital spending without maintenance is money thrown away. Exactly right. One of the aspects of the master plan that we're asking these organizations to come up with is a recommendation on a way for us to achieve the proper maintenance as well. That may include the recommendation to add labor force. I don't know, but I'm just telling you that we recognize that, and these professionals are asked to make a recommendation as it relates to the maintenance issues as well. So we're not going to, it doesn't make any sense to buy a brand-new car if you haven't figured out how you're going to pay for the gas and keep the thing running. Same thing with our parks.
I'm not going to ask for a rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Okay. Mr. Savet?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. All right. Somebody want to make a motion to recess into executive session? Okay. Waddell?
We have, let's state the purpose, Mr. Mayor, for purchase of sale or property.
Okay.
The motion.
Motion to recess an executive session for the purpose of purchase or sale of property. Okay. Waddell made the motion,
Second.
and Mr. Savet seconded. Roll call.
Bariak.
Yes.
Waddell. Braymeyer.
Yes.
Alberati. Savet.
Yes.
What's that?
Can you sign that just so that